Well, shooters and reloaders and Three Circles passengers and members, it's Fortune Cookie 45 LC coming to you from the Hot Lead Zone Express. And you might ask, what is the significance of this? And turns out that it's very significant what happened in the past when Bruce Hodgdon, who started up the Hodgdon Powder Company with surplus military powders after World War II, did a very important thing, because at the time the gunpowders were considered to be kind of like an explosive. This is smokeless gunpowder. This trinitrotoluene, which is a nitrated compound, organic compound, explosive, TNT, were considered to be classified as similar materials. And even today, people think gunpowders are explosive. When they find out that reloaders might have 10, 20 pounds of gunpowder in their homes or apartments, they're concerned because they think it's going to blow up. And that was the same thing that was considered as a government policy before Bruce Hodgdon did something, pointed out that smokeless gunpowder is not explosive. It'll burn just like any other flammable substance, but it doesn't explode. When this is touched off, it turns into an explosive reaction called deflagration, where it turns into a shock wave that is produced, and it doesn't require confining this. This is an explosive. This is a flammable substance. And what Bruce Hodgdon did was he got this classified as a flammable substance instead of a Class B explosive. And that was critical because you couldn't ship explosives without a tremendous amount of regulation and taxation and expense. By getting this classified as a flammable substance, that caused the possibility of shipping this for a reasonable price, making it possible for the entire reloading industry to happen. And we owe Bruce Hodgdon a tremendous debt of gratitude, because without his intervention many years ago, back in the 50s and late 40s, we never would be able to ship gunpowder today without an exhaustive amount of regulation. But with the coming of Pyrodex, that was a momentous development in the muzzle loading activity. Pyrodex really was a groundbreaking, earth-shaking development. So all of you muzzle loaders out there, that's something else that Hodgdon did. But today, if you look at all the Hodgdon gunpowders, going back from the early ones like this one, where it cost $3.25 a pound, and this one that cost $4.05 a pound when I bought this, and it was even cheaper before then. But now Hodgdon and the accurate gunpowder and the ram shot powders are all under one umbrella of Hodgdon. And not only that, but Hodgdon also bought RCBS. The purchase of RCBS by Hodgdon was actually recently in 2024, and that stems all the way back when Fred Huntington was starting up RCBS. That was right at the same time that Hodgdon was still pretty early in the gunpowder business. So they go back a long way together, and it's kind of a natural fit for Hodgdon to want to get into more areas of reloading by buying RCBS. Well, that actually leads me into the topic of this video. Well, recently I was contacted by Joel Hodgdon, who's a direct lineage of Bruce Hodgdon, the founder of the company. And he suggested that he'd like to help me with some of my content creation. So, since Hodgdon is preeminent in gunpowder, I suggested that perhaps one of their latest reloading scales, like their M1000, would be a real help for me to use in a lot of my videos, since we do a lot of reloading videos. And powder scales are very important in our activity. So sure enough, Hodgdon sent me a M1000 reloading scale. And this is their top of the line scale today. It's a big, impressive unit that is over a foot long. So if you've got the bench space for it or make a shelf for it, then you can use this scale very nicely. It's got great capacity, goes up to 1,000 grains, actually over, because you add the capacity on the right. And the way this works is you have to squeeze the little plastic cover together and it comes right off. If you don't read the instructions, you wouldn't know that. So this is one scale, you gotta read the instructions. Now it's all self-contained in terms of storage. So once the plastic protective case is removed, we go ahead and install the beam into the agate bearings, set everything at 0, put the pan hanger and pan onto the little bracket there, and then we go ahead and use the foot to set the 0 on the balance beam to the 0 marker on the frame of the scale, and we're ready to go ahead and use this for our reloading. Well, when it comes to balance beam scales, we tend to trust them because trust is earned. And when we use a balance beam scale, it gives us accuracy and repeatability, dependability, and also consistency. And when that is reinforced over and over again in many reloading sessions, that trust is built on and into the whole process and into the scale and instrument itself. So let's go ahead and see if we can trust this. And there's no better way to do that than use some check weights. I have here an RCBS check weight set. And this has a number of good usable weights that are standards. We can use these to check the accuracy of our scale. Now, the RCBS M1000 has 3 poises. And the easy way to figure this out is this poise here goes from 0 to 1 grain. And that means that the gradations in the next poise are 1 grain. So you got 0 to 1 grain, and then here you see it's 1 grain for each increment here. 0 to 5 is 5 gradations, 5 to 10 is 5 more gradations. And then that goes to 20, and that means that the gradations on the third poise are 20 grains between gradations. So you got 0 to 1, 1 to 20, and then the 0 all the way to 1,000 in 20 grain increments. So what I've got here is I've set this at 0, 0, and this one's set at 10. So this is 10 grains. So we'll just go ahead and use the 10 grain check weight, put that in, and see if we get a reading of 10 grains. And look at that. That's right on. So we're getting some trust built up already. Now notice I've got the middle poise set at 20 grains, and here is a 20 grain check weight. Did you see how quick that dampened? That's because this scale has magnetic dampening. But look at that. That's right on 20 grains. We're getting more trust all the time. Now, however, there's more than one way to do 20 grains. So we set the middle poise back to 0 and then go to the first line on the left-hand poise. That's 20 grains right there. So we put the 20 grain check weight back in again and see if that's on. Look at that. That is right on. I think that's pretty trustworthy. Okay, you want to see me set the little poise here. So now let's set it for 100. That's 100 grains right there. And then we'll put in the 100 grain check weight. This is like measuring out powder for a .458 Magnum rifle, or somewhere around that much, maybe a .458 lot or something of that nature. Look at that, it's right on. Now of course we know this scale is accurate to 1/10 of a grain plus or minus, but that's right on. We like that. So there it is on 0 again. And I know what some of you are thinking, and that is, well, fortune cookie, suppose I don't have a .375 Holland Magnum, I don't have a .458 Winchester Magnum, but I do want to shoot some .38 Special Bullseye. So what about a real light charge? That should give this scale, this balance beam scale, pretty good test, don't you think? All right, well, let's set it for, I've got a check weight here for 1 grain and a half grain. So let's set it for 1.5 grains. And that means 1 gradation here, there, and a half here. All right. Now we'll put in the 1 grain check weight and the half grain check weight and see what we got. By golly, that's right on. What do you think? Is that right on? Yeah. So this scale is good for light charges also. I think the trust is going strong here. Well, look at this. The scale comes with a check weight for 694.6 grains. So let's set the balance beam for 694.6. I guess that's because some shooters out there are loading for 50 BMG and they might want to weigh bullets or something of that nature. Or maybe we're loading for a 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum and we're going to load some real heavyweight bullets. So we want to set this for 680 and then set this for 14. Come on. So there's 680, 694.6. There it is. I'd be very surprised if this is on 0. This is going to be heavy. We'll put this check weight right in the middle. Wouldn't surprise me if this is off. And that magnetic dampening is pretty good there. Yeah, you see it's off by 1/10. That's pretty close. Now let's go ahead and set that back to 0 after all that heaviness on that beam, and see if the scale returns to 0. This is part of that repeatability we're talking about. Right on 0. I think when you're weighing that much and it's only off by that little bit, that's speaking a lot to the accuracy of this scale. Now notice that the RCBS powder trickler, it's almost like it's made for this scale. And we can go ahead and trickle charges using this scale. You know, there are some reloaders out there that have been using digital scales for their whole reloading career. And some of the newer reloaders out there might not even consider a balance beam because they're all into that computerized digital kind of mindset. And nothing wrong with the digital scales. It's just that they might not be as durable as we would like. But this could be durable for generations. And once again, the trickle doesn't have to be slow. If you're only off by maybe 2 or 3/10 of a grain and you're trickling up a charge, that could be very good and fast also. The quality of this scale is top flight. I'm thinking this scale could be a entire career scale for a lot of us reloaders. The die-cast body is very nicely executed, and it's obviously a very precision balance beam. Notice the levelness of the pan hanger and the pan position. We like that also. About the only thing I can say is that the adjusting foot seems to be a little bit on the flimsy side, but then again, if that part failed, I'm sure the RCBS would have reinforced it. All in all, having done a lot of trickling in the past, I can look at this setup and say I like it. And if one wants to get something a little bit on the nicer side, higher quality side, very nice scale that we can use. I'm looking forward to using this in my next reloading project. Bye for now.